Yes, so I've gone back to another edition because I was here on the boxing ratings, and there's 50 of them. So it would take a whole video. I did the first one, the heavyweights, but just to mix up with wrestling, I've gone back to my 1953 edition with a little bit of wrestling here, and then I'm going to come back and do the ratings. So it's a mixture of boxing and show wrestling. But I say this show wrestling, there is a history to it, which it was in the golden era of wrestling. It was very real, and you had the Great Gamma here, India in Bombay against Stanislaw Zbyszko. There was a couple of Zbyszkos, Vladek Zbyszko, but the Great Gamma here. But again, this was real wrestling in the sandpits of India. The Great Gamma. There was a Great Gamma in the show wrestling a lot later on, but it wasn't the same guy. Against one of the show wrestlers, Owen Hart. But this is the Great Gamma. And yeah, it was quite a tradition of Indian wrestlers. There was a few different names like Hari Narayan Singh, Bishem Chobe, and they used to train with Muggars, Indian clubs or Joris, even Naals, Naal, which is like a big concrete ring, as it were, stuff like that, real old school stuff. As John L. Sullivan did back at the end of the 1900s. He was about in the beginning of the the end of the 1800s and the beginning of the 1900s. John L. Sullivan was around, and he used to train these similar stuff, Indian clubs, £6 Indian clubs, and run 20 miles. He was made to run by William Muldoon, who was a Greco-Roman world champion. William Muldoon, who was John L. Sullivan, the bare knuckle boxer's trainer, as was a guy called Farmer Burns back in the day, Farmer Martin Burns, who would train the boxer as a conditioner, James J. Jeffries, who was a little bit further on from Sullivan. But I digress. And again, the Great Gamma, thousands of fights, he was unbeaten. They'd engaged in wrestling competitions called dangles, and again they'd had like a hip throw. I suppose you could compare it to our flying mare throw, a dag. It was called a dag, a D-A, spelled D-A-H-K, hip throw. Yeah, I mean, a little bit of history there. The Great Gamma, there's a stone that still today it takes 25 people to move. Again, amazing athlete. So I mean, you have the golden era, like I was talking about, with these guys, Hackensmith, Stanislav Zbyszko, etc. And you had like Duncan C. Ross, was a Greco-Roman world champion around this time. Edwin C. Bibby, a guy called David Graft, who drew over 2 hours and 19 minutes with Martin Farmer Burns. And again, he got the name Farmer Burns by turning up in his farming clothing as he beat Ed the Strangler Lewis. He would also hang himself from a like a noose to strengthen his neck, and a lot of people say that was because he was fighting Ed the Strangler Lewis. You had the Yusuf the Turk, it's called Yusuf the Turk Ishmael. He fought Evan the Strangler Lewis, and he survived the allotted time. So again, as the story goes, he won loads of gold and travelled in the ship back to his homeland, and the ship sunk with him on it. So the story goes anyway. And then you had Joe the Limey Acton, lots who lost to Ed the Strangler Lewis. Ed the Strangler Lewis beat the guy I was talking about, the Greco-Roman guy, Ernest Roberts. He beat him. Dan McLeod beat Martin Farmer Burns. He retired and ended up training Frank Gotch. Frank Gotch, he's famous for the Frank Gotch toe hold that he beat George Hackenschmidt twice with. But in his early days, he'd wrestle like grown men, and obviously the work and etc. But he worked on pins, so it wasn't just strength. Martin Farmer Burns, who would become a conditioner of James J. Jeffries, the boxer, who fought Bob Fitzsimmons, James J. Corbett, Jack Johnson, etc. But yeah, Dan McLeod beat Frank Gotch. He challenged Frank Gotch in his early days. He said he was a furniture salesman, and then he left his card with him to say his name, and he was a champion, etc. And then this got home to Martin Farmer Burns. So Frank Gotch challenged Martin Farmer Burns and got beat, but then he would start training with him, and again, he's regarded as one of the best. Well, some people say he's the best. Had the Wrestling World Championship for 10 years. He was a 22-year-old when he got beaten by Dan McLeod, Frank Gotch. Yeah, but he beat him in his gym when he was a young man. But then he would start his development when he got beaten by Martin Farmer Burns, Frank Gotch. Tom Jenkins, kind of a little bit of history here, who lost to Dan McLeod. They said it was leg poisoning. He had a poisoned leg. You had that in another fight. Was it Morrissey and Heenan in a bare knuckle match? And it was an abscess. Because they go for long times, these guys, and you get stuff like that. Stop matches sometimes in the wrestling matches and also the bare knuckle boxing matches. There's a little bit of basic history of the wrestling days. See, Frank Gotch lost to Jenkins, then he beat Jenkins in the rematch, and Frank Gotch beat Hackenschmidt twice with a toe hold. Twice he beat him, giving away weight, etc. George Hackenschmidt was another famous old-time wrestler. And then again, sort of after that, Hackenschmidt apparently drew with Gamma and then lost by default by not turning up. I heard different stories. Obviously, the later Joe Sketcher beat Charles Cutler. He wasn't regarded as a champion until Frank Gotch gave him his approval to being a champion, but Joe Sketcher were going to the show wrestling, etc. later on. That's how it sort of links up. So I'm going to go with the boxing now, come off that, and come into the boxing ratings here, just to mix it up, because it'll be all boxing ratings otherwise. So I finished on the heavyweights. This is going back to that December the 10th, 1964, boxing and wrestling edition. Come from the 1953 magazine there. So we're back to this 1964. So light heavyweight division, champion Willie Pastrano trains. Yeah, so Willie Pastrano there. And then we got Gregorio Peralta, number 1. He gave heavyweight George Foreman a tough test on his way up, went the distance with him. And Harold Johnson, number 2. Mario Mina from Peru. And Joe Torres, who was trained by the great Tyson and Floyd Patterson trainer. and Gustav Schultz from Germany. And Eddie Cotton. Number 6, Roger Rouse, California. Carl Bobber Olsen, the Hawaiian Punch. Bob Foster from Washington, D.C. I don't know if there's when he went up, because he went up to heavyweight, but he didn't carry his weight up, his punch up, unfortunately, losing to Fraser and Ali. But he was the only man to cut Ali, in a weird bit of trivia there. But he didn't trouble him at all, really. But he cut him. Only man to cut Ali, as far as I know. 10, Wayne Thornton, California. Dean Bogani, California. California fights there. Roger Rouse is California, and Cole Bubble Olsen. Obviously, that's where they're training out of. And 12, Giulio Rinaldi from Italy. Yeah, he fought Archie Moore. Johnny Purcell, New York. Henry Hank from Michigan. Chick Calderwood from Scotland. Terry Downs, who would beat Paul Pender for the title. The Marine Terry Downs from England. Actually fought on the bill with the Crays, actually. A little bit of trivia there. In his early days, an actual proper professional bill with the Crays on it. So I digress. 17 was Perio del Papa from Italy. 18, Hans Wohlers from Germany. And 19, Jimmy Dupree from New York. 20, Arthur Brown. And 21, Herschel Jacobs. 22 was Hank Casey from California. And 23, Sixto Rodriguez. And 24, Pietro Tomassoni from Italy. 25, Alan Thomas. Let me go up there. So 26 from Finland, Pekka Kokkonen. 27, Freddie Mac from New York. 28, Lennart Risberg from Sweden. 29, Peter Gampert from Germany. Number 30, Bas van Diavenbode from Holland. 31, Bobby Stinanato. And 32, Mitchell Vinot from France. 33, Paul Roux from France also. 34, Bernard Quiller from France. So 3 from France altogether. A bit weird that, but 35, Malcolm Worthington from England. And another one, 2 Englands together and 3 Frances together. So 36, Freddie Cross from England. 37, Chuck Leslie from California. 38, Johnny Halafihi from Tonga. 39, Floyd McCoy from New York. 40, John Hendrickson from BWI, not sure what that is. And 41, Wilhelm von Homburg from Germany. 42, Paul Johnson from New York. 43, Lean Hansen from Holland. 44, Germinal Ballerin from France. 45, Lotus Martin. Yeah, he would beat Liston at the end of his days in the heavyweight division, and also in an unfortunate match with Sonny Banks, a man who put Ali down early in his career. Obviously, Ali was only put down officially 4 times. The Chuck Wepner one in the end of his career was more of a where he stood on his toe and put, but he's still regarded as a knockdown. So he had Fraser, Henry Cooper, and Sonny Banks and Chuck Wepner. But again, Lotus Martin in that match, bit of a tragedy there. 46, Hiram Campos from Argentina. 47, Jose Angel Manzur from Argentina. 48, Albert Ducher from Germany. 49, Rudolf Neffering from Germany. And 50, Benito Michelon from Italy. So, going to move on to the middleweights next, but we'll mix it up because again, this would take the whole video. I'm just going to do the first few to end it. So, yeah, I'll start that on the next one. So that's the end of the 10th video on boxing and show wrestling magazines. Bang.